Thank you again so much for your various comments. And Zulu Warrior says, Timmate, it's extremely obvious you're a humanitarian pacifist. I'm not sure I am exactly, but us Australians totally praise Suella Braverman's approach to the illegal immigrant solution. Apparently, us Australians did it first. Tim, whether you like or we towed them straight back where they came from, problem solved. Have a nice day, Tim. No offence intended. Just stating absolute facts about the Australian solution to the situation. Well, yeah, you're sort of right, Zulu. I'm not sure I would consider myself, A, to be a humanitarian pacifist, or B, that the Australian system is absolutely right. But it demonstrates quite a few things. First of all, that the refugee problem is not something that a single country can really afford to do on its own. The more countries that continue to try the Australian method, the more likely it is that the UNHCR and the ICC will start to get teeth to follow up their condemnation. It's 9 years or so, 10 years or something, since on July the 19th, the Australia First system transferred asylum seekers to processing centres in Nauru and Papua New Guinea. This was a development of the Pacific solution put forward by the Howard government in 2001, when Australia transferred 6,000 people to those islands. And, it didn't work as a deterrent because more of them came. And the problem is, although the Australian population, for the most part, was presented as being behind the laws to push back illegal migrants or migrants, on the idea that they were presented as queue jumping, as following illegitimate channels to get to Australia rather than legitimate channels, because there are and still continue to be legitimate and safe routes to Australia. The problem with Britain is there are very few of those legitimate and safe routes. So the Australian government took the view that the simple process was to exclude anybody who arrived in Australia by boat. Anybody who arrived by boat was excluded from pursuing asylum or settling in Australia, full stop. In 2008, Rudd's government repealed this legislation because they argued that it seemed inhumane. I agree entirely. But it was renewed in 2012 by Gillard as Pacific Solution Mark II, and it was even harsher. You've got things like Operation Sovereign Border, which you know about, in 2013, with the slogan, "Stop the boats." Oh, my goodness, we've seen that slogan recently as well. We have picked up a lot of this language, but I don't think we've learnt the problems that the Australian government faced. I don't think we've recognised the problems. We've simply seen the methodology and we think we can apply it ourselves. The problem is what works in one country once may not work in another country a second time, and Australia had plenty of problems, and I'm going to come to those in a second. In 2015, Turnbull passed the Australian Border Force Act, which was an attempt to curb the bad press. It imposed secrecy on the whole operation about immigration, quarantine, border control, all these sort of reports, and the sort of television films which came out. And what started to emerge from about 2013 onwards were concerns not only from UNHCR, but also from Papua New Guinea itself, about this huge population of people who were left in limbo, who were left without proper education, who were left in unsanitary conditions, the vulnerable, and the refugees now stuck in Papua New Guinea. The squalid conditions, the alleged sexual abuse of so many in the Nauru files, for example. And this led the number of complaints, the number of issues led to a system where medical transfers to hospitals took place, where again hospitals were overcrowded in Australia with failed migrants. I think we're going to see the same sort of thing happening in the UK. And the ICC, the International Criminal Court, that's the same court that has called for an arrest warrant on President Putin. If we take that arrest warrant seriously, then we must take the ICC court's rulings about Australia, and I'm sure in the future about Britain, seriously as well. The ICC court ruled that the detention sites amounted to cruel, inhuman, degrading treatment. That's just a very short blip away from torture. That's how serious it is. It's not something to be dismissed. And a crime against humanity under Article 7 of the Rome Statute. That is what the International Court said about the Australian system. Now, the Australian system has deterred migrants. There's almost no migrants coming to Australia by boat. But will the same extreme measures work in the UK, and will the courts be as reluctant to impose their will on Britain as they have been on Australia? My feeling is that if Britain follows the same route as Australia, the international courts will feel it's necessary to make a clear judgment, and to impose that judgment, and to make an example of Britain, so that other countries don't follow the same route. This is why it is so necessary for Britain to lead an international debate, so that there is an international solution to the migration problem, which will get worse, with wars, with climate change, with anxiety, and with ease of travel. There is so much more access to travel, even for people who are ridiculously and hopelessly poor. There is more option to travel around the world today than there was 100 years ago. Therefore, the problem is likely to get bigger, not smaller. We have to approach this from a global point of view. And it is madness for twits like Suella Braverman to bang on the dispatch box and scream about invasion when they have not got a global solution. All they are doing is putting off a problem of today until tomorrow. That is political expediency, that is cowardice, that is kicking the can down the road. So yes, I go back to the point that you made initially, Zulu, and I'm so proud that there is so much debate on this site. I'm a little bit dismayed by some of the trolling and some of the sloganizing, but I'm so proud that there is real debate, and that you feel that there's an option to actually raise these issues properly. And I will try and consider what I can. I don't have all the answers. Why would I have the answers? I'm just some sort of person living up in Rugby. But you say, I'm a humanitarian pacifist. We're all humanitarian pacifists unless we are pressed too far. And that's the point. You know, we need a solution before that solution is imposed, because we have no alternative. We have alternatives at the moment, and we should be intelligent and civilized enough to find an alternative that works for the world. We shouldn't end up in a situation where we are clawing for our livelihood, for our life, because we're being smothered by a genuine invasion. There is no invasion in Britain at the moment. Suella Braverman is using hyperbole in an extremely discriminatory way. But if this situation gets worse, significantly worse, we are not going to be able to control it at all. And certainly threatening to send people to Rwanda is not a way of controlling a situation which gets completely out of hand. If there are future global catastrophes, that situation will get out of hand even faster. And indeed, there is a global crisis, the other side of Europe, in Russia and Ukraine, which could easily cause a global catastrophe of astronomical proportions. And then we do not have the means to control what happens. We need to find a global solution. We need to find it now, and Britain could lead the way. And that would be something that in the failing days of his administration, Rishi Sunak could sit back and say he achieved. As it is, he's going to come out of this government in 2 years' time and say, what have I achieved? Nothing.